everyone, welcome back to Blooms and Bicycles, and hope you're all having a lovely time during this festive period. With Christmas Day now past, our attention shifts forward to the New Year's celebrations and all that these traditions have come to represent. During the less hectic part of this holiday period, opportunities for moments of quiet contemplation now arise. Offering a chance to recalibrate, we now look back and reflect on the year just gone, which has now become, quite literally, Auld Lang Syne. Expressing the essence of these famed Scottish hogmanay parties, this 18th century poem now reverberates around the world to the sounds of bagpipes as the clocks consecutively strike midnight. This is a point in time that now feels just as full of promise for the future as it does of wisdom from our pasts. And just like the checks of the iconic Scottish tartans, we now think about the rich tapestries of our own lives, which for all the surprises and eclectic experiences, inevitably become more colourful and intricate the further into our own journeys we go. Woven into the social fabric of these iconic traditional checks, centuries of British history are wrapped up in stories of Borderland families, Highland watchtowers and fortified castles with that mystical Gaelic culture that these tartans have now come to stand for. Taking inspiration from this beautiful country that we have to thank for our New Year's Eve celebrations, a wide array of multicoloured winter floristry is brought together through lots of velvet texture flowers in crimsons and creams. Then accompanied by the sapphire-blue winter berries, cross-sections of blooms in deep magentas, bright greens with splashes of yellow run throughout each design. So why not replace the festive cheer of the Christmas tree with a tartan-esque flower bouquet from what we bring to you today, the Tartan Tidings flower collection. In today's video, we'll be showing you how to construct the Tartan Tidings Teapot letterbox flowers. Our water vessel today is already prepared, however if you would like to understand more about how to keep your flowers as fresh for as long as possible, you can refer to our flower care video which can be found in the description box below. So as we always say, to construct our grid to begin with, we'll take the strongest of stems, which in this collection are the Viburnum Blackberry, the Conifer and the Thistle. So out of these, the heaviest one is the Conifer, and this will either come to you as several stems or one main stem, just depending on how it's been trimmed by the flower growers from the bush. So with this one, it actually is quite a nice height relative to the teapot, so we'll leave this just as is. And as we always say, we'll trim away on an angle, removing any of the leaves which will fall under the water line, keeping hold of any for now because they might come in handy for that spout. And these are quite unique in the way that they grow. They have almost like a coral-shaped formation on some of the leaves. So even though they might be quite low down on the stem and close to the opening of the vessel, ideally if you can, you want to leave as much of this feature on as possible. And already that's created a grid pretty much in just one hit because there are so many offshoots and the spines on the stems create so much volume. So this is going to give a lot of support to the other flowers that are to come. Then to take the Viburnum Blackberries, again we'll assess what this is like size-wise in comparison to the teapot. Actually this looks okay as it is. So we'll just weave this through some of the branches on the conifer shoot. The good thing about weaving it in between some of the branches on the conifer is that they both anchor each other into place with them being both so heavy, but still offer enough of an angle to then create that fan effect that we always talk about. And now for the thistle. These are naturally much longer than the other two branches so far, so we'll take advantage of this and trim away just an inch off the first one and position this towards the back. And there is a bit of negative space just in that area, so that first one is perfect there. And to significantly trim away some of the stem for the next piece, which will go in the middle area, there'll be a nice graduation now of these violety bluey tones coming from the very back at the top and then working down to cascade to the very front with this final third piece. Again, making sure none of the leaves will fall under the water line. We'll just take away what looks like it will do before adding it in. And what's beautiful about these thistles is how there are so many smaller branches with the flowers coming off the one stem. So when you do position this towards the front of the vase, it cascades over, which always looks really pretty. And now to introduce our splashes of yellow to start building out that cross section in our tartan design, using this beautiful variety of Solidago. So although we say the magic of 3, usually, in this collection we do have just 2 stems of the Solidago because they are so voluminous with so many offshoots. So trimming significantly, some of the stems might actually become individual pieces once you take away the main section from the bottom. And now to start adding this in a cross-like formation. It doesn't have to be an exact cross, but if you can sort of replicate something like the Royal Stewart check, it just adds a bit of fun to the design. And sometimes if the conifer that you've added in so far takes up quite a bit of room, you might just want to lift it away from the water vessel and then lower it back into place once other things are weighted underneath it. So with this particular stem of Solidago today, there are so many offshoots, so it actually works to trim away individual pieces and add them in as smaller sections to create that cross. So we just keep going, trimming away on the angle, as we always say, adding them at varying heights to create those different points of interest. So again, lifting away the conifer and to drop it back into place now. Some of the shoots are becoming smaller the further up the stem we go. These actually are perfect for the spout. And now for the final piece. As one cluster, if we trim this right down, it would look quite nice, sat under the viburnum. So lifting it up slightly again, and then dropping back into place. And now to take the green chrysanthemum, again like the green you see run throughout the Royal Stewart check. Because this is quite a naturally long stem, we'll position this on the opposing side to the thistle that's been added at the back so far. Again, just because we want to build out that natural fan shape. And now to add our velvet textured flowers, which in this collection are the Pussy Willow and this beautiful variety of Red Celosia, which as you can see has a gorgeous pink cerise undertone to it, similar to some of the other flower stems in last month's collection. So in this teapot letterbox design, you'll receive 3 of each. So it's all about building out the triangles and working to the magic of 3. So that's what we'll do, starting with the red. Taking away any of the leaves, unless they're at the very top and in pristine condition. So we'll leave one taller at the back. And making sure the flower head is twirled around so it's fully visible. This stem is actually really pretty with the leaves in place. They're so perfect, I think they're worth leaving in. It might just mean though that they don't last as long as the flower head, so if you do wish to leave them on, then maybe just be mindful to take them off the flower stem in a couple of days' time when they do start to wilt. And again, we'll twirl this to make sure it's visible. And similar to the variety of conifer used today, the celosia also replicates that same shape as the petals grow in the flower. It almost looks like coral. So now we'll add this on the opposite side, again, because it's all about that natural balance. And just be sure other stems are fitted back in place if they do move. And now to take the 3 stems of Pussy Willow, we'll create another triangle, making sure that the conifer doesn't overpower the beauty of these stems. Just be mindful to position them in such a way where you are still able to see them as much as everything else. And again, like we always say, stems don't have to go all the way to the bottom of the teapot, as long as you keep the teapot topped up regularly to make sure everything does get water. Use the grid to your advantage to create those unusual shapes and angles. And now to take our other red stems, which is this beautiful Red Rosebud and these gorgeous Red Ranunculus. So we'll position the rosebud in the central area, with it being so upright. So these are dried stems and don't need to be in water, so if you just weave them in between some of the other flower stems and position them in the place where you see it best in your mind's eye. And now to take our ranunculus. Again, you receive 3 of these too. And we'll just start to create a really good distribution of red, with it being such a dominant colour in many of the tartan checks. And although we have got 3 of each of the red stems so far, besides the Red Rosebud, ultimately it does make a 7-point star. Again, just being mindful to position flowers, twirling them until the flower cup sits in a place where it's most visible. I'll just come around the front to see where best to place the final point of our red star. And I think that'll look perfect in between them flowers there at the front. So again, just lifting out gently the conifer to make way for the stem as you introduce it. Just be mindful to check over the other stems to ensure that they're sat where you want them to be. And now to take our Robusta. Now to take our violet coloured stems, which in this collection are this gorgeous deep purple anemone, again which you receive 3 of, this carnation for some contrast, followed by this Eustoma, which is a blend of the 2. So with our carnation, you can leave it just as it is, which is the way it would be used traditionally, or just for a little bit of a modern twist, you can actually pinch out the central petals, keep them to one side, and what then happens is it reveals the centre of the flower. So if you then push open the petals by pressing downwards, the flower takes on a completely different dimension if you want it to. Again, it's all just about preference. It looks very wild when it's like this. So it's just a case of whether you want that vintage look or whether you want something a bit different. So again, with this being a very naturally long and straight stem, we'll position this off towards the back. And now to take the anemones, which as the light passes through these petals are stunning. Can't wait for you to see them in real life. These stems are much softer, which is why we introduce them towards the end, so that there isn't too much arranging that has to go on after them, which could then disrupt them. And they do sometimes grow, as they're obviously seeking light with the flower growers. They do take on quite a wild stem shape sometimes, which is really lovely in its own right. So making sure you can see that sort of quirk when you position your flower, again, just adds to the interest of the design, making it look more wild and free. And now that we have the 2 anemones so far in the central point and then off to the left, we'll position this one off to the right, so the 3 are in a fan shape again. So just holding gently our arrangement and gradually lifting it out of the teapot. We'll then add in our flower stem and gradually drop it back into place. And now our flower grid is becoming quite packed actually. So with the Eustoma, it might just be worth trimming away each of the individual stems, as it will make it easier to insert into any of the gaps left so far. And also because the individual Eustoma flowers, when they're in a cluster, they are very pretty. However, you just get to focus on the detail of each flower head so much more when you just see the individual one here and there. So again, removing any of the leaves which are of no benefit to the display, and any that will fall under the watermark, we just keep adding in and twirling the flowers to show the full of the flower cup, and making sure each one has its own space. And now just with our final couple of pieces of Eustoma, which are much shorter than the others, these will look perfect in the spout and at the very front. And now just to finally accent our tartan design with some small splashes of white, again as you would see in the Thompson check or the Royal Stewart check, we'll add in these wild garden roses randomly by weaving them in between the conifer and making sure they get into a space where they will get some water. So again, we'll just lift it up gently and gradually introduce into one of the gaps. And now to add our final rose. Looking for any voids, we'll see if this one can go. Maybe in between these red, green and purple splashes, just to slightly break them up and create some contrast. And now just to give things one final look over, I'll come round to the front. Excuse me, Bella the dog. Always getting in the way. And I think we're thereabouts. If you do see anything which has shifted unexpectedly, just tweak it and fix it back into place. Depends on where you prefer things to be. So as just one final touch, being the book lovers that we are, sorry if you can hear Bella the dog sniffing away, we'll then just position our vase on top of a book, and taking those carnation petals which you pinched out earlier, we'll scatter these around the bottom like confetti. Or if you don't wish to do that under your flowers, you can always keep them as some table confetti for next time you have dinner. And there you have it, the Tartan Tidings Teapot Letterbox flowers. I hope you enjoy. Happy New Year and enjoy making those January resolutions.